trapped deep inside a $13 billion floating steel leviathan. 5,000 isolated souls are silently battling a relentless, invisible war. Pushed to the absolute edge of biological endurance, they exist in a hyper-lethal, nuclear-powered machine where personal space and basic human comforts are completely eradicated. But how exactly do you keep thousands of chronically exhausted warriors alive, fed, and sane inside a deafening metal purgatory that never stops screaming? Let's dive into the brutal, unseen reality of deep ocean survival. Right at this exact, terrifying second, plunging through the volatile, pitch-black waters of the Western Pacific, a massive 100,000-ton leviathan is aggressively defying nature. The USS Gerald R, Ford, a $13.3 billion nuclear-powered supercarrier, requires just 2 brief sentences to describe its terrifying might. It launches 270 combat sorties a day and can obliterate targets 1,000 miles away. But beneath 4 acres of impenetrable flight deck armor, a completely different, silent war is raging. 5,000 human beings are battling chronically severe sleep deprivation, suffocating claustrophobia, and the brutal reality of deep ocean survival. The military engineered this invincible steel fortress to withstand supersonic anti-ship missiles. Yet its entire operational existence hinges on fragile, breathing flesh. Down in the cavernous, artificially lit bowels of the ship, the contrast is absolutely staggering. You have 19-year-old aviation structural mechanics maintaining $100 million stealth fighters, only to retreat to a metallic sleeping rack offering a mere 20 inches of vertical clearance. They exist in a high-pressure, hyper-lethal industrial complex where oxygen is synthetically scrubbed and natural sunlight is a rare luxury. The ship feels absolutely no fatigue. Its human operators feel every single agonizing second. Forget the polished Hollywood blockbuster aesthetics and the adrenaline-pumping recruitment commercials. This is extreme sensory overload compressed into a claustrophobic floating pressure cooker. When a sailor deploys for a grueling 240-day rotation, they instantly surrender their bodily autonomy to the demands of the ship's dual A-1B nuclear reactors. They become highly calibrated biological cogs, tightly integrated into a 24/7 warfighting machine. There is zero personal space, no quiet sanctuary, and absolutely no escaping the deafening, bone-rattling vibrations of aircraft catapults snapping overhead. Naval strategic doctrine dictates that advanced radar arrays and CIWS defense grids are entirely useless if the operator is critically fatigued. Therefore, sustaining this massive human element morphs from a basic administrative task into a ruthless, high-stakes tactical operation. Every single day aggressively revolves around an unyielding triad of basic human needs: caloric intake, cellular regeneration, and absolute hygiene. These are not civilian chores. They are highly synchronized, non-negotiable military maneuvers. Failure in any of these 3 pillars immediately degrades combat readiness, putting 5,000 lives at imminent risk. The United States Navy has spent decades coldly optimizing this subterranean survival architecture into a microscopic science. Planners calculate the exact minimum caloric baseline needed to haul 500-pound munitions across a sweltering 120-degree flight deck. They meticulously study how many consecutive hours of sleep deprivation a radar intercept officer can endure before their cognitive degradation causes a fatal mid-air collision. The margins for biological error are terrifyingly thin. It is a daily, relentless mathematical equation balancing human sanity against absolute global naval dominance. This extreme environment represents the ultimate, undeniable testament to the unyielding iron will of the American sailor. They willingly subject themselves to chronic physical deprivation and immense psychological isolation far beneath the waterline. They silently sacrifice their fundamental civilian comforts, trading soft beds for metal coffins, so the world's most lethal strike group remains fully operational. The raw human endurance required to fuel this floating superpower is nothing short of deeply inspiring. We understand exactly how these lethal warships project global power. We know the exact thrust capacity of the fighter jets roaring off the bow. But sustaining the fragile human heartbeat of this steel beast is a completely different, mind-bending reality. How exactly does the military flawlessly execute the impossible logistics of feeding 5,000 starving, exhausted warfighters 17,000 meals a day, hundreds of miles from the nearest grocery store? The ruthless culinary mechanics behind this operation will permanently shatter your current perception of reality. To comprehend the sheer magnitude of feeding a nuclear supercarrier, you must violently shatter your civilian concept of a kitchen. On board the CVN-78, the galley is strictly classified as a high-capacity biological refueling infrastructure. It operates with the exact same ruthless urgency as the JP-5 aviation fuel pumps on the flight deck. This is a thermodynamic processing plant designed exclusively to sustain organic combat assets. Every single 24-hour cycle, a specialized tactical cadre of precisely 114 Navy culinary specialists executes a staggering logistical miracle. They meticulously synthesize, prep, and deploy exactly 17,300 meals within a highly rigid operational loop. They endure brutal 16-hour shifts trapped inside sweltering, windowless steel compartments deep below the waterline. Ambient temperatures in these subterranean galleys routinely exceed a suffocating 135 degrees Fahrenheit during peak operations. This relentless culinary machine aggressively burns through an astronomical grocery budget of $45,000 to $65,000 every single day. That equates to a staggering $1.9 million monthly expenditure, strictly dedicated to keeping human weapon systems fully operational. The daily consumption metrics are mind-boggling and strictly enforced by rigid naval dietary doctrine. Within a single rotation, the enlisted crew absolutely annihilates 1,600 pounds of frozen chicken and 350 pounds of fresh lettuce. Most critically, the crew consumes a massive 20,000 cups of high-octane, industrial brewed coffee every single day. This heavy, continuous caffeine intake is the liquid fuel keeping the carrier's tactical nervous system online. Male warfighters are prescribed a strict, non-negotiable 2,850 calories, while female operators receive precisely 2,100 calories. The Pentagon actively designs these targeted caloric payloads to prevent microscopic cognitive degradation during high-stress combat maneuvers. But you cannot simply summon a commercial supply truck when a 100,000-ton warship exhausts its subterranean pantry. This extreme geographical isolation necessitates one of the most perilous maritime maneuvers in existence, underway replenishment. Every 7 to 10 days, a massive 40,000-ton T-8 dry cargo ship pulls dangerously alongside the active supercarrier. Both gargantuan vessels aggressively power through unpredictable, violent ocean swells at a synchronized 15 knots. They are separated by a terrifyingly narrow, highly turbulent margin of just 150 feet of churning black water. One minor hydrodynamic miscalculation by the helmsman instantly yields a catastrophic, multi-billion-dollar steel collision. Under extreme hydraulic tension, heavy steel cables are aggressively fired across the oceanic abyss, locking the Leviathans together. Through this precarious tension lifeline, up to 700,000 pounds of frozen provisions are violently transferred mid-voyage. Simultaneously, twin-engine MH-60S Seahawk helicopters execute vertical replenishment, aggressively slinging massive cargo pallets through the sky. They drop thousands of pounds of vital combat calories directly onto the carrier's pitching flight deck amidst deafening rotor wash. It is a hyper-coordinated ballet of heavy machinery, raw physics, and unyielding military discipline. The military literally moves mountains of supplies across hostile waters without dropping a single knot of tactical speed. Once secured deep below the armored waterline, this massive stockpile of food transcends its basic nutritional value entirely. In a claustrophobic, monochromatic steel labyrinth devoid of natural sunlight, a hot meal becomes the ultimate psychological anchor. It represents the sole remaining tether to human normalcy for 5,000 isolated, chronically stressed personnel. The Navy strategically leverages this intense psychological dependency to maintain absolute tactical order and flawless mission readiness. Menus are rigorously rotated on a strict 21-day cycle to artificially disrupt the crushing monotony of a 6-month deep-sea deployment. Even the dining architecture strictly reinforces the military chain of command, visually dividing the crew by tactical status. Enlisted personnel rapidly consume their rations in chaotic, heavily congested mess decks resembling loud industrial cafeterias. Conversely, senior officers retreat to isolated wardrooms featuring pristine white tablecloths and refined, quiet service. However, the invisible threat of sudden kinetic violence constantly shadows every single bite swallowed on this warship. If a hostile radar contact suddenly triggers the ship's general quarters alarm, all dining operations violently cease. Exhausted sailors instantly abandon their food trays, sprinting frantically through narrow passageways toward designated combat stations. In a fraction of a second, the organic machine is fully fueled, highly caffeinated, and preparing to deploy overwhelming lethal force. Depending on the severity of the immediate tactical threat, they might not eat again for 8 grueling hours. The biological system is pushed to its absolute kinetic maximum, burning through stored calories at an alarming, highly unsustainable rate. But what exactly happens when this massive, highly volatile combat adrenaline inevitably crashes, and the human body violently demands to shut down? How do you physically force 5,000 exhausted, hyper-alert warriors to sleep inside deafening, vibrating steel coffins when the combat adrenaline finally evaporates? The immense physiological debt must be violently repaid. But achieving actual rest aboard a 100,000-ton active warship remains a brutal, elusive illusion. You are entirely encased in a hyperconductive steel hull engineered specifically to amplify kinetic energy rather than absorb it. True restorative sleep is a tactical impossibility. Sailors simply achieve brief, fragmented states of forced unconsciousness. The fragile human body aggressively demands immediate cellular repair, but the nuclear supercarrier absolutely never stops operating. Forget any civilian metric of physical comfort, personal privacy, or basic bodily recovery. Sailors are aggressively packed into claustrophobic, poorly ventilated compartments and stacked 3 tiers high in metallic horizontal tubes, known accurately as coffin lockers. The precise physical dimensions are a suffocating 77 inches long by exactly 27 inches wide. That equates to a brutal surface area significantly smaller than a standard civilian twin bed. It creates an incredibly oppressive environment designed strictly for maximum storage efficiency over human comfort. The physical margins for basic survival are terrifyingly compressed inside these pitch-black steel racks. From the top of a painfully thin, 3-inch flame retardant foam mattress to the cold steel ceiling directly above, there is exactly 20 inches of vertical clearance. You cannot sit up. You can barely execute a lateral roll without striking cold, unforgiving steel bulkheads. Every single worldly possession a warrior owns for an 8-month deployment must meticulously fit inside a microscopic 10 by 22 by 41-inch aluminum locker. These subterranean berthing modules are buried deep below the heavily armored waterline, completely sealed off from the natural outside world. Sailors routinely endure staggering multi-week stretches without absorbing a single photon of natural sunlight. They wake up under harsh, synthetic fluorescent tubes, execute grueling industrial labor under synthetic tubes, and attempt to sleep under those same synthetic tubes. This aggressive environmental disruption triggers severe, permanent circadian desynchronization, fundamentally breaking and artificially rewiring the fragile human biological clock. But the ultimate enemy of cellular regeneration is the relentless, bone-shattering acoustic trauma. A nuclear supercarrier operates as a continuously detonating industrial metropolis, grinding away at a deafening, unforgiving tempo 24 hours a day. Twin advanced reactors constantly emit a low frequency, structural hum that aggressively vibrates straight through the marrow of your bones. Heavy steel watertight doors violently slam shut, and heavy combat boots relentlessly pound against the grated steel passageways located mere inches from the sleeping racks. Above their heads, the auditory nightmare reaches an absolute, terrifying, and explosive kinetic crescendo. Massive stealth strike fighters, generating 44,000 pounds of raw turbofan thrust, violently slam onto the flight deck during high-stakes night trap recovery operations. The heavy arresting cables scream under immense tension, and the massive kinetic shockwave violently reverberates straight down into the enlisted berthing decks. To survive this auditory assault, sailors religiously deploy industrial-grade earplugs and thick blackout masks just to achieve one fractured hour of sleep. The military actively compounds this severe physical torture with punishing, highly irregular tactical shift rotations. A radar intercept technician might operate the combat grid during daytime hours 1 week, then violently pivot to the exhausting graveyard shift the next. The fragile human body is aggressively denied any consistent baseline for physiological recovery. The Pentagon strategically monitors this chronic sleep deprivation because an exhausted, severely sleep-deprived weapons operator inevitably suffers from critical, mission-ending cognitive latency. A mere half-second delay in tactical situational awareness can allow a hostile hypersonic ballistic missile to completely bypass the automated defense grid. Recognizing this fatal strategic vulnerability, naval architects radically redesigned the berthing architecture for the newest supercarriers. They aggressively phased out the chaotic 180-person mega compartments heavily utilized on older hulls. The military tactically deployed smaller, highly modular 40-person berthing units to drastically reduce foot traffic and effectively mitigate structural noise transmission across the lower decks. These upgraded, specialized compartments provide a vital psychological release valve for the isolated, highly stressed crew. Yet, the crew must constantly battle the suffocating steel, the deafening jets, and their own rapidly deteriorating biological limits, silently sacrificing their sanity and personal comfort to aggressively project an indestructible aura of absolute American naval supremacy. But sealing a massive human population deep beneath the waterline for 8 straight months invites an invisible enemy far deadlier than any cruise missile. How does the military prevent a catastrophic microscopic outbreak from erupting inside these cramped, dark shower corridors? In this hypercongested steel capsule, a single mutating stomach virus or a highly contagious influenza strain can rapidly paralyze the entire operational command structure of a $13 billion supercarrier. Therefore, executing absolute personal hygiene instantly transforms from a basic civilian routine into a strictly enforced, non-negotiable tactical mandate. The military aggressively combats this invisible biological threat using highly restrictive, heavily regulated sanitation protocols. But maintaining a completely sanitary environment deep beneath the ocean surface is a colossal, unprecedented engineering nightmare. The newest nuclear hulls feature gender-neutral heads equipped entirely with seated vacuum-powered toilets operating exactly like commercial airliners. When a sailor flushes, a massive pneumatic vacuum aggressively sucks the waste through a highly complex, interconnected network of undersized titanium pipes. This hyper-efficient system represents a catastrophic, multi-million-dollar tactical vulnerability when inevitable human error occurs. Exhausted sailors frequently flush unauthorized debris like heavy mop heads or thick uniform shirts, instantly crippling the delicate pneumatic infrastructure. When a severe clog strikes the active carrier, it violently incapacitates dozens of vital toilets across multiple decks simultaneously. To restore critical sanitation operations, maintenance crews must execute a highly toxic, extremely dangerous chemical acid flush. This aggressive chemical intervention costs American taxpayers a staggering $400,000 for every single deployment incident. When the pneumatic toilets fail, desperate sailors face a brutal physiological crisis while confined deep within the labyrinthine ship. But the absolute harshest reality of deep sea hygiene occurs inside the incredibly cramped, bare metal shower stalls. Fresh water is the single most precious tactical commodity on a warship, even one equipped with massive nuclear desalination plants. Every single drop is strategically rationed, forcing the crew to meticulously execute the notorious hyper-efficient Navy shower. You turn the freezing water on just long enough to wet your skin, then violently shut the valve completely off. You rapidly scrub your entire shivering body with heavy industrial soap in the highly ventilated air of the metallic stall. Finally, you activate the water for exactly 10 seconds to aggressively rinse the harsh chemical lather away. This entire grueling procedure utilizes a strictly enforced maximum of only 3 gallons of water per sailor. By comparison, a standard civilian shower wastes a luxurious 60 gallons of pure water every single morning. When multiplied across an entire combat crew, this ruthless fluid conservation directly sustains the thermodynamic cooling operations of the nuclear reactors. Getting clean is only half the battle. Maintaining sanitary uniforms is an entirely different, scorching industrial hellscape. The cavernous subterranean laundry facilities process a staggering 150,000 pounds of heavily soiled clothing weekly. These massive laundry compartments operate 20 hours a day, generating lethal ambient temperatures reaching 135 degrees Fahrenheit. In those brutal laundry rooms, sailors work frantic, 1-hour shifts simply to prevent catastrophic heat stroke. They frequently hand wash uniforms in small sinks rather than risk losing their essential combat gear in the chaotic industrial machines. Every single aspect of this grueling deployment is meticulously designed to test the absolute breaking point of human physiological endurance. Yet, this extreme daily suffering constitutes the exact undeniable bedrock of global maritime security and absolute American freedom. Without their silent, unseen daily sacrifices, the entire geopolitical world order would instantly collapse overnight. These young, remarkably resilient warriors are not enduring these brutal conditions for personal glory or massive financial wealth. They aggressively surrender their comfort, their precious sleep, and their fleeting youth to project an indestructible shield of lethal deterrence across the globe. They stand the watch in pitch-black oceans so the rest of the civilian world can sleep peacefully. The ship provides unstoppable kinetic firepower, but the unbreakable human spirit provides the absolute operational soul. Could you physically endure this terrifying steel purgatory for 6 agonizing months to defend your nation? If this raw, unfiltered look into extreme military
The Nimitz-class carriers have been the backbone of American naval power for decades.
Take one exact
Ships like the USS Abraham Lincoln, USS George Washington, and USS Ronald Reagan, each one carrying entire communities across the world's oceans.
Right now, and always stay absolutely sharp. Warriors.